What do you think is there in that subconscious? What do you think of the Jungian shadow? What's there?
There's this idea, as you're familiar with too, I'm sure, that this Jungian idea that we all have all things inside of us, that all of us have the capacity to be evil, to be good, et cetera, but that some people express one or the other to a greater extent. But he also mentioned that there's a unique category of people, maybe 2 to 5% of people, that don't just have all things inside of them, but they actually spend a lot of time exploring a lot of those things, the darker recesses, the shadows, their own shadows. I'm somebody who's drawn to goodness and to light and to joy and all those things like anybody else. But I think maybe it was part of how I grew up. Maybe it was the crowd I was with. Maybe, but then again, even when I started spending more time with academics and scientists, you see shadows in other ways, right? You see pure ambition with no passion. I recall a colleague in San Diego who, it was very clear to me, did not actually care about understanding the brain, but understanding the brain was just his avenue to exercise ambition. And if you gave him something else to work on, he'd work on that. And in fact, he did. He left and he worked on something else. And I realized he has no passion for understanding the brain like I assumed all scientists do, certainly why I went into it. But some people, it's just raw ambition. It's about winning. It doesn't even matter what they win. Which to me is crazy, but I think that's a shadow that some people explore, not one I've explored. I think the shadow parts of us are very important to come to understand. And look, better to understand them and know that they're there and work with them than to not acknowledge their presence and have them surface in the form of addictions or behaviors that damage us and other people.
So one of the processes for achieving mental health is to bring those things to the surface. So fish the subconscious mind.
Yes, and Paul describes 10 cupboards that one can look into for exploring the self. There's the structure of self and the function of self. Again, this will all be spelled out in this series in a lot of detail. Also in terms of its relational aspect between people, how to pick good partners and good relationships. He gets really into this from a very different perspective. Fascinating stuff. I was just sitting there I will say this, that 4-episode series with Paul is, at least to date, the most important work I've ever been involved in all of my career, because it's very clear that we are not taught how to explore our subconscious, and that very few people actually understand how to do that. Even most psychiatrists. He mentioned something about psychiatrists. If you're a cardiothoracic surgeon or something like that, and 50% of your patients die, you're considered a bad cardiothoracic surgeon. But with no disrespect to psychiatrists, there are some excellent psychiatrists out there. There are also a lot of terrible psychiatrists out there, because unless all of their patients commit suicide or half commit suicide, they can treat for a long time without it becoming visible that they're not so good at their craft. Now, he's superb at his craft. And I think he would say that, yes, exploring some shadows, but also just understanding the self, like really understanding like who am I and what's important? What are my ambitions? What are my strivings? Again, I'm lifting from some of the things that he'll describe exactly how to do this. People do not spend enough time addressing those questions. And as a consequence, they discover what resides in their subconscious through the sometimes bad, hopefully also good, but manifestations of their actions. We are driven by this huge 90% of our real estate that is not visible to our conscious awareness. And we need to understand that. I've talked about this before. I've done therapy twice a week since I was a kid. I had to, as a condition of being let back in school. I found a way to, either through insurance or even when I didn't have insurance, I took an extra job writing for Thrasher magazine when I was a postdoc, so I could pay for therapy at a discount because I didn't make much money as a postdoc. I think for me, it's as important as going to the gym. And people think it's just, ruminating on problems or getting smart. No. If you work with somebody really good, they're forcing you to ask questions about who you really are, what you really want. It's not just about support, but there should be support, there should be rapport, but then it's also, there should be insight, right? Most people who get therapy, they're getting support, there's rapport, but insight is not easy to arrive at. And a really good psychologist or psychiatrist can help you arrive at deep insights that transform your entire life.